All right, welcome to Niners Nightly. Larry Krueger back with you. Hope everybody's having a fantastic Tuesday. It is a warm Tuesday out here in the East Bay. Man, happy September the 23rd as we get things rolling on Niners Nightly. And when I say it's a warm day in the East Bay, I mean, it is absolutely smoking out here. Ridiculous weather. I mean, the fall weather that we get out here in Northern California is just it's beautiful all summer. It's unbelievably nice all summer long. And then you get to September and it's just a freaking nightmare of just constant heat. And I mean, Walnut Creek right now is 94 degrees. It was 96 today. 94 degrees in the last week in September. It's almost October and it's in the high 90s out here in the creek. Anyway, enough complaining about the weather, but it is a warm night for sure. Welcome to Niners Nightly. 40, we got people already in the chat rolling. The 49ers 2025. What's up, Krug? What's up? Genera Sarek says, bring on the Cincinnati Kid. Oh my goodness. We got people wanting the unbelievable edge rusher Trey Hendrickson from the Cincinnati Bengals. All right. So what do we got planned tonight? What do we have planned? Well, first, we always start with what happened today in 49er land. So why don't we start there? The Niners made some moves today. They signed a defensive end to their practice squad, William Bradley King, who was with them at the end of training camp, and he's got some talent. He's not a talentless defensive end. So they signed him to their practice squad to give themselves one more body on the defensive line that they potentially can go to in-house. They brought in 5 players today for tryouts. Shiloh Sanders, Deion Sanders' kid. Some people think he's a scheme fit. I've never been overly impressed with either Shador or Shiloh. I think they're all right. I mean, they're all right. But if they weren't Deion Sanders' kids, nobody would say anything about either one of those guys. Totally forgettable. But Shiloh did come in they did bring him in for a tryout. They also worked out Titus Leo, who's a 26-year-old defensive end who was really good in college. He played at a small school. He's 6'3", 245 pounds. He played in the Northeastern Conference, and he was the NEC Player of the Year way back. 6th-round pick, I believe, in the 23 draft. Then there's an Isaiah Thomas, and it's Isaiah Thomas, the linebacker from Oklahoma. Don't know much about him. Brandon Joseph, a defensive back, a 24-year-old defensive back who played collegiately at Northwestern and Notre Dame and was an undrafted free agent the year he came out. He came in for a workout. And then Jalen Mahoney, the Niners' former, he was a 2024 undrafted player, I believe. Mahoney came to the Niners in 2024. He looked good at times this summer, and nothing special or anything by any stretch, but decent prospect in his own right. So probably the best player on that list is probably Shiloh Sanders. Interesting that the Niners worked out these guys, and we'll see where it goes. As far as the broadcast coming up this weekend, it'll be Mark Sanchez and Adam Amin on the call on Fox. Niners and Jaguars go Sunday at Levi's in week 4. Pretty interesting article today in the SF Standard by Tim Kawakami, who reports that the Niners have liked Bengals defensive end Trey Hendrickson for quite a while. Tim says that the Niners have coveted Hendrickson, Myles Garrett, and Max Crosby. Well, it's good to like. I guess it's good to like the best, right? Those are the best defensive ends going, pretty much. But he wrote an extensive article today, which I've read and I talked about it. It's kind of interesting. I mean, Tim is going right to the top of the heap. It's like you lose Nick Bosa, go trade for Trey Hendrickson. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, if you can do it, go for it, right? Go get the guy who's probably better than Nick Bosa. I mean, let's be totally honest about this. Nick Bosa doesn't have 35 sacks the last 2 years. Trey Hendrickson does. So Trey Hendrickson's probably better than Nick, really. But But, Tim writes an interesting article. He says, hey, quick strike solution. How about trading for Trey Hendrickson? He says the Niners don't want to be rash, but there's some urgency here. They're 3-0. They've been battling a storm of injuries, and yet they're still 3-0 out of the chute and looking like very much like a playoff team and maybe even a Super Bowl contender. Tim goes on to say how the Niners acquired Bryce Huff. They drafted Mikael Williams, but they drafted these guys to be in addition to Nick Bosa, not instead of. So, Tim thinks that this great start adds responsibility to the Niner front office. Shanahan on Monday during his presser was asked about potential trades. He said, we'll look at trades like we always do. This is during the conference call. He says, but there's got to be trade options that make sense for you and another team. You can't just do that stuff just to do it. Well, I don't think anybody is saying do something just to do it. I mean, that's crazy. But I think people are saying, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You got a Super Bowl contending team. Are you going to improve it? They really didn't spend much money in the offseason. It's almost like, some people I've talked to said the Niners are all about 2026, and this year they never were all in on this year. Well, if that's the case, then there's no chance in hell that they're trading for Trey Hendrickson if they were all in on 2026. But I mean, let's be honest, that doesn't make any sense at all. You'd be all in on 2026. Explain that to me. Make that make sense. Trent Williams might not even be on the team next year. George Kittle, who knows where he'll be next year? Nick Bosa, who knows where he'll be next year? Christian McCaffrey, who knows where he'll be next year? Most of the guys who are the best players on this team are in the twilight of their career. They're in the twilight of their prime for sure, and many of these guys are probably at the very end. I don't think Nick Bosa is going to play another 5 years. I don't think George Kittle is going to play another 5 years. These guys are on the backside of their careers already. And Trent Williams might be at the very end. I mean, this could be it. This could be the final year for Trent. So this idea that the Niners are all about 2026, really, that's their plan. They're all about 2026. I heard a couple people say that today. Yeah, they're all about 2026. Really? Well, that's a dumb idea. If they are all about 2026, that's idiotic. Why would you think that all your primetime guys who are in the twilight of their prime, why would you waste a year of their prime thinking about a future season when you could win this season? Until the Bosa injury, there would be no reason at all to not go or be all in this year. Why? Because your defense is a little young? Because you're introducing a few young players on the defensive side of the ball? That wouldn't be a reason to tuck tail and give up on 2025. So I don't know if I believe the people who say the Niners have always been about 2026. And yet at the same time, I don't think they're going to trade for Trey Hendrickson. I really don't. I mean, Hendrickson, according to Tim, has long intrigued the 49ers. And there's no doubt he's available. He's definitely available. He's a pending free agent. Bengals couldn't get him signed to a long-term deal. The Bengals are looking at a lost season. Burrow's out until December. Yeah, there's no doubt. Hendrickson's available. If you want Hendrickson, he's available. The question is, what's the price tag for a guy who racked up 17 and a half sacks last year, 17 and a half sacks the year before that? He led the league in sacks last year. He's already got 2 sacks this year and 6 hits on the quarterback in the first 3 games. This guy's a beast. This guy's a total monster. So it's interesting. The Niners have been in this cost-cutting mode all summer, all spring, and all summer. They didn't, they're acting like they're pinching pennies. They're acting like the budget's really, really tight. So I don't think they're going to bust their budget, but would they consider busting their budget for Trey Hendrickson? I'll say this. He's the kind of player I would bust my budget for. You say, well, what does that mean? What kind of player is he? The Niners traded for Chase Young, and he Cadillac'd it in the NFC Championship game. He literally dogged it in the NFC title game. He literally went 3/4 speed like you would go in like a 4th and final preseason game or the 3rd and final preseason game. Chase Young Cadillacing it in the NFC title game. It was so brutal that I had to call it out myself. I literally had to call it out myself. I waited to the end of the press conference because I'm like, hey, let's let somebody else call this out. I don't want to call this out. But I wasn't going beyond that presser without calling it out. So I just waited. I waited and I waited and I waited. Waited for some other courageous soul to stand up and ask Shanahan. And guess what? Nobody did. So right before the end of the presser, I said, hey, Kyle, you got guys who were literally Cadillacing it on the backside in the NFC Championship game. And I just asked him the basic question. I go, is that your culture? Is that your culture? And he gave me a look like if looks could kill. And then he said, absolutely, it's not our culture. And then I was kind of wondered, maybe he was happy I brought it up. Somebody had to call out Chase Young. Might as well be me. So I'm like, hey, he was Cadillacing it. And so was Givens. And that's not your culture. And that sure as hell ain't your culture in the regular season. And it really ain't your culture in the playoffs. And it really ain't your culture when whoever wins the game's going to the freaking Super Bowl. And you got guys dogging it. You got guys loafing on the backside. I mean, that was awful. That was embarrassing. And when Steve Wilkes sat down the next day to talk to us about it, he walked right into the room and he just stared right at me. And he's like, yeah, it's unacceptable. And it's like, yeah, it's unacceptable. You need me to tell you that? You need me to call that out? Then John Lynch had a meeting the next day and was like, I don't think you're going to see that again. We've discussed this internally. Well, good. It's good. Would you have discussed it internally if I hadn't brought it up at the presser? So I don't like bringing in veterans from other teams because you don't know what their culture was. The Niners brought in Devondre Campbell last year, and it was a nightmare. Why? Because he's been on a bunch of losing teams, and he's got a losing attitude, and he's been in losing cultures and losing situations, and he's a losing player. So he comes to this situation, and you got Nick Sorensen trying to tell us that he's a strong veteran influence in the room when we all witnessed this guy imploding in the middle of the locker room, dropping F-bombs and losing his composure. And it was like, this is your strong veteran leader? Really? Really? So that obviously was just a bunch of crap. Okay. I mean, there was no doubt about that. That was garbage. 2 weeks after this guy was a great leader, he had to be like ushered off the facility and called out by everybody for dogging it and for not trying hard and, just being a bad guy, not refusing to go into the game. So you can't just go and bring a bunch of veterans in from other places. The only guys you can bring in are the guys who have an absolutely unassailable amount of effort to their game. The guys who have the motor that's just undeniable. And that is Trey Hendrickson. Hendrickson's not just a great talent. He's got an unbelievable motor. He plays very, very hard. So that he checks that first box. I won't bring in a veteran player who doesn't play hard or who I'm not 100% convinced is going to play his what off because you're going to pay him a lot. You're going to pay him more than other guys in the room that have been part of your program for years. So if you're really going to go after a free agent or a trade for a veteran, you got to make sure the guy's got a great motor. You got to make sure the guy's going to play hard. You got to make sure he's got a high work ethic. You got to make sure he's going to fit in the room and not just be this guy that stands out like a sore thumb. So, to Chase Young. Okay. Other people have suggested maybe Eric Armstead or Leonard Floyd. I don't think either of those guys really, really work here. I mean, Armstead is a guy everybody likes, but he's a tackle. He's not an end anymore. He can't play end. He's not fast enough. Leonard Floyd will sell out for sacks, but he can't play the run. He's just a sack guy only at this point. He doesn't give you anything against the run. He's not going to do anything against the run. He's just going to, and he's not even really going to do anything against the pass. He's just going to kind of sell out for a few sacks, and he'll get a few sacks, and that's about it. So those are the names that have been thrown out. Now, some people have thrown out Kayvon Thibodeau. And Thibodeau is an interesting name to throw out there for sure. New York Giants defensive end, 77.5 run defense grade from PFF, 5 run stops this year, 12.5% pass rush win rate. He's got 2 sacks, 12 pressures. He's under contract through 26. So he's out there. I don't know what it's going to cost you, but you could maybe get Kayvon Thibodeau away from the New York Giants. Tim points out in his article that it would take a really special player for the Niners to really contemplate moving significant draft capital or paying up in a future contract. They've done it in the past with Trent Williams in 2020. They did it with McCaffrey in 2022. It's not like they won't make trades. Heck, the Niners have popularized the trade under John Lynch. And Hendrickson is the kind of guy that would probably check all the boxes. He's great. He's 30. Because he's 30, Tim doesn't think he'll command a massive long-term guarantee like Bosa got from the Niners or Parsons just got from the Packers. Tim doesn't think it's going to cost multiple first-round picks like it took the Packers to get Parsons because he is older and he's a free agent at the end of the year. So Tim's got a trade package that I think is kind of interesting. It's got conditions to it. He's saying, how about a first and a third next year and a second in 2027? And that would be if Hendrickson plays 60 or more of the Niners' remaining defensive snaps this year. The Niners get to the playoffs, and then he re-signs. So, if this all happens, the Niners will have had a really good year, and they'll have Hendrickson and Bosa signed up for 2026, and maybe it's not worth surrendering those picks because just for that alone. Then he says, well, how about this condition? Lower it to just a first rounder if Trey Hendrickson plays 60% of the snaps and the Niners get to the playoffs, but Hendrickson doesn't re-sign. So now you're giving up a first round draft choice, but you're all in on the Super Bowl in 2025. And then he's like, well, and then how about this? Let's lower it again to just a second rounder if Hendrickson plays with the Niners 60% of the snaps, but the Niners miss the playoffs and Hendrickson doesn't re-sign. So basically, if the bottom falls out, the Niners basically are just giving a second round pick for Trey Hendrickson. So, it's an interesting concept. It isn't the conditional trade is an interesting concept for sure. I think the Niners ought to have some urgency. We'll see. His 2025 base salary, Trey Hendrickson's is $16 million. Could they fold that in for this year? Probably. This is a guy who's walking away from the Bengals at the end of the year, almost guaranteed. So the Bengals, it's not like, the Bengals want a king's ransom. They may not want a king's ransom. They may just want to get something for a player that they're going to lose at the end of the year for nothing. So it's interesting. Trey Hendrickson is a huge talent, and it's definitely an interesting discussion. Do you go for Trey Hendrickson? All right. My thought on the thing is that I think Hendrickson is a really good player. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a really good player. The question I would have is it's only week 3 going to week 4. So you have a lot of the season still left to play. What if you trade for Trey Hendrickson and then he gets hurt? Now you're down picks next year. You're down multiple defensive ends. It's only week 3. The other thing is, I don't know if I would want to do it just a one-man. I think if I'm going to replace Bosa, I think I want to get a couple guys. And who's going to make trades? The only teams that are going to make trades are teams that are out of it or teams that are going nowhere. But there are options from teams that are going nowhere. I'll throw a few of them out here. You go to Cincinnati and you say, hey, how about Trey Hendrickson and Joseph Osai? Now you got 2 guys coming back. You go to New Orleans and you say, how about Carl Granderson and Cam Jordan? You go to New York and you say, hey, how about Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns? That would be something. You go to Miami and you say, hey, how about Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips? So some of these teams have multiple options. Houston, go to Houston. They're 0-3. We'll take Derek Barnett and Darrell Taylor. You may want to get 2 guys just because you've already had a bunch of injuries. You may want to do this with depth. The one that I like the most, the option that I like the most, and I don't even know it's an option, but the Jets are bad. And Robert Saleh drafted Will McDonald out of Iowa State. He's a great speed rusher. And they also have Michael Clemens, who's 6'4", 270. He's very much like Bosa as far as size and stature. How about Michael Clemens and Will McDonald for next year's 3rd-round draft choice? You're probably going to be able to turn around and trade Mac Jones at the end of the year for a 3rd-round draft choice anyway. Might not be a bad idea. That's the deal that I would seek out. Will McDonald and Michael Clemens for a third-round draft choice. Now, there are no free agents of interest. Shaq Barrett, Carl Lawson. I mean, but they've had injuries. They're older. Jerry Hughes is 37. There's also the practice squad route. And I went through this the other day. K'Mon Rucker from Baltimore. Like him a lot. Mo Kamara from Tampa Bay. I think he's a great option. Isaiah Foskey went to De La Salle. He's on Cincy's practice squad. He's not a bad option. Cleveland Farrell was here before. I don't love that option, but he's on the Chargers practice squad. Elijah Chapman is a very hyperactive, kind of a do-it-all defensive lineman who wins a lot of reps. You know, he's not really a defensive end. He's 5'11", 280. He's more of a tackle. He's more of a – but he wins reps, and he's had a good start. To me, if it was me, I'd sign Mo Kamara tomorrow off Tampa Bay's practice squad. He's 6'1". He's roughly 260. He's got a great first step. He's an excellent speed rusher. He was great at Colorado State. That's the guy that I would try to get off the practice squad. Plug him in right away, and then see where it goes for a week or two, and see if you can work out a deal. But the Jets are the team I would call. Will McDonald, Michael Clemens. I do this with numbers. You know, yes, Trey Hendrickson is a great replacement for Nick Bosa, but you know what? You know, you might want to do this with numbers. All right, couple other notes today. The Niners are going to receive $7 million in cap space from an insurance policy on Nick Bosa's 5-year, $170 million contract. So they get a $5 million cap space reprieve for 2026 because they took out an insurance policy on Nick Bosa's $170 million contract. As far as the Niners through 3 weeks, they currently rank 10th overall in DVOA, 8th on offense, 6th on defense, and wait for it, 28th on special teams. I mean, can they ever be good on special teams? Ever? Is it asking too much to be decent on special teams? A couple guys that I want to shout out that are doing really well that we haven't shouted out. Jordan Elliott is really emerging this year. He's having a great year. He's got a 72 PFF grade, 71 pass rush grade, 4 pressures, 17.1% pass rush win rate. That's 12th in the NFL among all defensive tackles. That's a guy we want to shout out. Absolutely want to shout him out. Another guy that deserves to be shouted out, believe it or not, is Jake Brendel. Jake Brendel is one of the NFL's highest rated centers through 3 weeks. 79.1 PFF overall grade, second among 44 centers that were graded out. 68.7 pass blocking grade, that's 12th. 79.2 run blocking grade, that's third among all centers. He is not allowed a sack, and he's only allowed 4 pressures. So he ranks 35th among all centers in that regard. One other note, Texans today cut safety C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Now, this guy's a difference maker. I would absolutely sign this guy. This guy hits like a linebacker, covers like a corner. He's a great nickel. He can play free safety, strong safety, corner, nickel. There is no spot that he can't play. 2022, C.J. Gardner-Johnson's with Philly. They were really good. Their defense was really good. They went to the Super Bowl and lost. They lost him the next year. He went to Detroit. What did Detroit do? Detroit almost went to the Super Bowl with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, except Brock Purdy beat him in the NFC Championship game with a huge second-half comeback. Otherwise, they're going to the Super Bowl with C.J. Gardner-Johnson for the second year in a row. And by the way, what happened to Philly's secondary in 23 without C.J. Gardner-Johnson? They were horse shit. Terrible. Lance Blankenship and all these guys, awful. Terrible. Really, really bad. Tampa did anything they wanted passing-wise in that game in the playoffs. So then what happens in 2024? He goes back to Philadelphia. They win the Super Bowl. So this guy is a hell of a player. I had people saying, oh, my God, don't sign him. Dude, tell me you know nothing about football without telling me you know nothing about football. C.J. Gardner-Johnson could man up right now on the corner, free safety, strong safety, nickel, linebacker. He can play it all. And the proof's there. The guy was awesome at Florida. He was great with the Saints. He went to Philly. They went to the Super Bowl. He went to Detroit. Philly became a disaster. Detroit almost went to the Super Bowl. Then he goes back to Philly, and they go back to the Super Bowl and win it. And now he's in Houston, and today he was cut loose. Now, he's not necessarily the kind of guy you want around because he runs a little hot when things aren't going well. I'm not saying he's the world's greatest guy, but man, he is a hell of a player. And yes, I think the 49ers should sign C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He's really, really good. All right. So we're about 25 minutes roughly into our Niners Nightly, but we have a guest. JP Shadrick is in the house, and we're going to add JT Shadrick to the mix right here. Caught up with JP just a few minutes ago before the show, and a little conversation with JP Shadrick, who covers the Jaguars, does the pre and post game show out in Jacksonville, and we looked ahead to the game coming up on Sunday. All right, welcome back to Niners Nightly, and it's my distinct pleasure to welcome to the airwaves JP Shadrick, who's Jags senior reporter, works for the Jags, also does some work on 1010XL AM, the Jags flagship station. You can catch him on Happy Hour. He's the host of that, does Jags HQ, and he's with us to break down the 2-1 Jacksonville Jaguars. JP, how are you?
Doing well. 2-1 is never a bad thing. It hasn't really happened a whole lot over the history of the Jaguars organization to be this decent this early. And when they a lot of times have been this decent this early, they've been really bad late. So you know how it goes. It's a long season in the NFL, but it's better than being 0-3. I can tell you that.
Well, we saw Liam Cohen, yelling at Trevor Lawrence, hit him in the chest. And Trevor wasn't having any of that. Gave him the old, kind of what my kids do to me when I say, take out the trash. Dad. How would you describe the relationship between Lawrence and Cohen, first year head coach?
I think it is as easy as that something that was so viral, if you will, is so insignificant. That relationship has been really tight in this offseason. They've worked really hard to try to make this thing work and get Trevor Lawrence comfortable in Liam Cohen's offense. And it is the third offense for Trevor Lawrence in now 5 years in the NFL. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's a very intricate scheme, a lot of motions and shifts, and they haven't quite got the hang of that yet. They've had a lot of illegal shift calls in the first 3 weeks of the season. So there's some of that going on, but the relationship is good. I mean, it seems like Trevor usually makes the right checks at the line, and they have good, clean communication when they come off the field and onto the bench and throughout the week in the building as well. So by all accounts, from hearing from both sides of it, they're very happy with where they are right now. They just need a little better execution from the quarterback. I think that's a fair statement too. He's missing some passes down the field and, missing some open players and throwing short on deep passes. So there's some things to come with that. But so far, they're 2-1. They found a way to win a couple games. Is there room for improvement with that relationship and the way it kind of bleeds over into the offense? Absolutely. But it's early in the season, and I think there's a positive foundation they built all offseason.
I think they got to be feeling good about the division. I mean, the way the Texans are off to the 0-3 start and Jacksonville's 2-1. You mentioned Lawrence in a number of different schemes. That seems like the plight of a lot of quarterbacks on teams that don't win is that you're going to have to work with multiple coaches, multiple OCs, different systems. One thing I've noticed is the Jags seem like they're running the football a lot better. They drafted Bashil Tutin. They've got Travis Etienne. Talk to us a little bit about Jacksonville's running game, because it seems like it's been one of the NFL's better running games early on.
And that's the way it worked in Tampa last year with Liam Cohen as the offensive coordinator. They really had to rely on that running game a good bit more than they thought. They had some injuries in the passing game at wide receiver last year in Tampa, so Liam Cohen adjusted, and they had a couple good backs down there to get the job done. They also made some changes on the offensive line here in the offseason, brought in a veteran center and a veteran right guard to go along with a first-round right tackle and a left guard who's a solid veteran player and a left tackle who's been around for a few years. May not be a top-end left tackle, but he's a good player in Walker Little, actually, who you guys know pretty well in that part of the world. So they start with that. And, last year it felt like when it was 3rd and 1, it felt like 3rd and 5. They couldn't push anybody around. They had issues in the short game, in the running game. And that was a number one priority, was to increase the level of physicality on the offensive line. And the way they block is a little bit different now. They do a lot of zone stuff and some things, and some wham blocks from the tight ends that come in. So there's a lot of that kind of moving parts behind the O-line to open up some of these holes. And then the approach from the running backs, I think, has been really solid too. ETN is in the final year of his rookie contract, the 5th year. He was a first-round draft pick. So he's in this option year right now. So you know how that goes with players in a contract year. You sometimes get a little more you're a little more locked in at times in a lot of things. I think ETN has really taken the right approach with that this offseason, and it's starting to show here on the field. And then Tootin has been a fantastic addition. He's not scared to run it up in there. He hasn't really broken a big one yet, but when he does, he's got like 4.33 speed, and that will be fun to see. But it is nice to see him run it between the tackles, and he falls forward. He doesn't fall back. And they also added LaQuint Allen in the running back room too, late-round draft pick out of Syracuse, who they love in the pass protection game, and he'll contribute a little bit in the running game. But for the most part, it's been ETN and Tootin, and for 2 weeks at least, they were leading the league in rushing, and I think that's going to be a staple of what they do. The passing game will work off the running game for the Jags.
Who's the play caller? Is Cohen calling his own plays, or Yadinsky, the OC, is he the play caller?
Yeah, Liam Cohen is actually dialing it up on game day. So, that was an early question when he was hired, because there were play calling issues around here the last couple of years with Doug Peterson and Press Taylor, who was calling it, when in the game they were calling it. They were switching it mid-game one year, and they didn't really want to answer the question. The first question was, are you all – and before the question was over, Liam's like, yeah, I'm calling plays. I'm calling ball plays. That's what we do here. So Yadinsky's heavily involved, of course, in the plan all week long as the offensive coordinator. And Trevor Lawrence is heavily involved in that, certainly. So, but when it comes to game day, Liam Cohen's the one dialing it up.
The guy who I think might be the best receiver in football is Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, I know people, if you say best receiver in football, they're going to say, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. But this guy's probably as good as those guys. He just hasn't quite made a name for himself. He was awesome at LSU. He's a touchdown scorer. He was their first-round pick. It seemed like most rookie receivers struggled. He did not. He looks fantastic. How's he looking this year? How's Brian Thomas looking?
Not good, honestly, to be quite frank with you. It has not been good for Brian Thomas this year. And last year, it was a slow start for him. There was a game where they targeted him like 3 or 4 times only early in the season, and that was kind of the case a lot early in the year. And then later in the year, when they had no other options, some other guys were hurt, he was getting all the targets, and a bunch of the yardage and things came late in the year, and touchdowns and things, which is great, and he made the Pro Bowl. But this year, it just kind of started in training camp. The ball was on the ground a lot, and some drops in camp. We're like, okay, maybe, all right, he's a gamer, right? The lights will come on, and he'll turn it on. Well, that hasn't been the case. He had a bunch of drops again on Sunday, a ton of them in week 2 in Cincinnati, and the ball's been on the ground. And that has just been an unfortunate, just a kind of a mind game with him, I think. And then finally, fortunately for the Jags, he caught one in the fourth quarter on the final scoring drive there, where there was a 0 blitz, and he checked out of a running play, Trevor Lawrence did, and hit Brian Thomas with a catch and run for like 47 yards to set up what would be the game-winning touchdown, and he needed it. I mean, he was having a bad day at the office. So if he can get past this drop issue, maybe that one play will spark him a little bit to kind of get over the edge. But it has not been a really positive start for Brian Thomas Jr. When he's on, I'm with you. He could be one of those guys. He's got height. He's got open field speed. He can go up and get jump balls down the field. That's where he made his bread last year. But we haven't seen that this season yet. And I don't know if concerned is the right word. It's still too early for that. But you just don't want to keep seeing 3 drops in a game every single week from him. Because they're going to have to rely on him, especially if De'Ami Brown's shoulder is not right. He's going to be the go-to guy.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's a dynamic talent, but I think you saw some of that inconsistency even going back to LSU. We'll see if he can put it together. Is there more patience among Jaguars fans or the Jaguar organization with the development of Lawrence? He was the 21 first pick in the draft. Every other quarterback is falling apart. It seems like Mac Jones has now found a second home here in San Francisco, and we'll find out who goes in the game on Sunday. But Jones is 2-0. Who's got more angst about Lawrence? Is it the Jaguars and Shad Khan and the organization, or Jags fans?
Well, let's start with the organization. I mean, Shad Khan has put everything he can into this football team. Free agent dollars, not scared to spend it on facilities, whatever he needs to do to try to help the football people do their job well. Like, he's going to do that. And that includes a quarterback, right? So if we need to go get you a couple receivers, hey, no problem. Let's just make this happen. So that I think there's a little more patience there because they've already given him a second contract. Like, he's in it, and he's going to get the big money starting next year. But he's in it. So they really have a couple years, 2 more seasons before that contract gets to the ability where you can get out and the dead money's not crazy. So these 2 years are big for Trevor Lawrence here and his future moving ahead. But I think the organization will give him what they can in those 2 years to make sure that he gets over the top. The fan base is not patient here with anything anymore. I mean, they have been burned so many times. I mean, this is my 14th season with the team, and this is the 6th head coach. So that's hard for any organization to stomach. There have been a lot of losing seasons. They've had a couple of playoff runs in that time, but they aren't sustainable, and they haven't been, at least. Hopefully this is the one that turns the corner with a younger staff and a younger vision and a different feel and approach to what it means to be a Jacksonville Jaguar, because what it is meant to be a Jacksonville Jaguar is 10 or more losses every year for a long time. They feel like those days are over. They say those days are over, but until they're over, they're still here. So that's the fan base in a nutshell.
That market? I mean, this is very much a pro market, right? We have Cal, we have Stanford, we have San Jose State. They draw friends and family. It's there's no buzz. I mean, I went last to the Niners Saints game in New Orleans the Saturday prior. I decided, you know what, I'll hit LSU, Florida. I went down to Death Valley. I mean, there's nothing approaching that level of intensity and emotion. And, I mean, the Southeast loves their college ball. How would you describe Jacksonville? Because they had some success early. But is it just, Gator country? I mean, if you walk through Jacksonville, is there passion for Jacksonville Jaguar football, or is it still, a college region to the bitter end?
Well, let's rewind a little bit, right, to your point. Early, it's definitely a college football town, right? Florida, The University of Florida is about an hour and 10 minutes away. And then Florida State is about 2 or 2.5 hours away, depending on how fast you drive on I-10. So those are the primary fan bases here. Georgia has a big influence here as well, by the way. So they're not too far up the road. They're about a 4-hour drive. So you can get there and have a day. So there's a lot of Georgia people here too. That said, this is an NFL town now, especially after 31 years. They had early success in the franchise's history in the 90s, of course, with those playoff runs and great teams. They've had limited success since then. They've had some good teams, some playoff teams, some good players come through. But really, since about that 07, 08 run where they had Fred Taylor and Maurice Jones-Drew and those guys, it just has been inconsistent ever since. However, when they're on and they prove that they're good, these people pack it out. And it is a rabid fan base. But as we said earlier, they're a little bit gun shy because of everything they've been told tales before of greatness and have been burned. So that's the fan base here. It is an NFL fan base. The ratings on television, good or bad, trump anything that the Florida Gators or the Seminoles get on Saturday. It's not even really close, actually. Wow. So it's an NFL town. But when they lose 4 in a row or not playing well or have issues, then a lot of times there's a lot of other things to do here too. There's a nice beach here. There's the river. There's fishing. There's a lot of golf. I mean, so there's competition in the marketplace That is not sports. So that's fine. But, this is a fan base that is here. And there's a transient group now. There's a lot of people from out of town here now, too, especially since COVID, right? This area has boomed since 2020. So there's a lot of Northeast folks that have come down and made a second home or just moved all together to the Jacksonville area. So you have to appeal to some of those people that are primary fans of another team. Okay, those people are maybe Jaguars fans second. Get them out to the stadium, and that's where we are. But they're here, and the Jags aren't going anywhere. And there's a new stadium in the pipeline in a few years. It's being built right now. So they're here for the next 30, 35 years especially.
JP Shadrick with us on the line as we talk a little bit about the Niners and the Jags, who go Sunday at Levi's. Week 4 in the NFL is upon us. Unbelievable how fast this thing's going by. Let's talk Travis Hunter for a second. How many snaps is Travis Hunter playing? Is he a better offensive player? Is he a better defensive player? Where has he made his impact thus far?
I think initially he is just a more, he's a better natural defensive player because he can read and react, and they play a lot of zone defense here in theory. So you're looking at the quarterback and you're covering just an area, and you can go make a play on a football, which is perfect for him. I mean, he's fantastic. And if he has to play man, he's really good man to man. I mean, so he can kind of hang if he needs to. They've been kind of slowly putting him more on defense this season, though. So as that has gone, first week he didn't play much defense at all. It was all offense. And now that's kind of become 50-50. And I think the snaps on both sides are just going to continue to grow. I don't see any reason. There's no rule book saying you have to slow him down. If he's feeling it and is playing okay and playing well, then you keep putting him out there until he proves that he can't. The problem on offense is that they've only had one real deep shot to him, and it was underthrown week 1 against Carolina and intercepted. It was a one-handed interception by J.C. Horn, but it was, he was 6 yards behind the guy. It would have been a touchdown, and the quarterback didn't get it to him. And then another target he had the next week, he's back left corner. He probably should have gone deeper on the back line in the corner of the end zone, but it was underthrown because there was pressure from Trey Hendrickson, and Lawrence couldn't get it to him. So he's finding openings, but it's just not been able to find that connection with the quarterback yet. A lot of his catches, most of his catches are within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, and then he'll make a move and then maybe squirt for 7 to 10 to 15, whatever it is, right? Last week was the same way. 5 yard out, made a great move on a guy, and he's up the field for 21. So I think that will grow in the offense. He's still going to play defense, and he's really good on defense. So you have to have him out there too. And it's I think he was about 70% of the plays on defense last week, and probably 50 to 55% of the snaps on offense last week. And again, if De'Ami Brown, one of the wide receivers, is unavailable moving forward, I think that will just continue to grow with him.
It was a big move by a rookie GM, James Gladstone, who I saw him on draft day. I thought, man, this is one of the youngest looking general managers I've ever seen in any sport. He comes from the Rams, though, and he's highly regarded. Have you had any one-on-one time with Gladstone, and what's your impressions of the new GM?
So James Gladstone is 34 years old, and, he walks in. It's like, well, it's the first time for me that both the coach and the GM are younger than me, which means a couple things. That football's changing, and I'm getting older. That's just that's how that works. But then, so James Gladstone has started doing a weekly radio show with us on our Jaguars radio network. So it's him and Tony Baselli, who's now the executive vice president. They're on together each and every Thursday for 30 minutes with us. And then the head coach will swing in occasionally. But just hearing his process of how he evaluates talent and how he operates a football team and a roster, it's pretty fascinating. He is a deep thinker and has a reason for every move he makes. And he's not scared to make a bold move. That was the first thing he said in one of his first press conferences was, we're going to make bold decisions and do what we can to help this team. And that was before the draft. And so that proved the draft night that he's moving from 5 to 2 to get a guy who he said can change the game. Well, that's high praise. So, but that's only going to continue. They've cut 2 guys, or they traded Tank Bigsby away, who was in that running back room, who a lot of people, he was the leading rusher last year. sent him off, right out of here. It was not fitting what they wanted in culture and on the field, especially. So, all right, see ya. We'll get some picks. That's fine. There was a defensive back in here as well that they ended up cutting after week 2. Same idea. There was no room for him on the field. Not quite what we're looking for in the room. All right, no, we're not going to be beholden to some of these old contracts that the previous regime had. So he's not scared to make a move. He's not scared to explain why he made a move too, which I really appreciate, because a lot of folks in that office feel like they don't have to explain anything to anybody. So it's refreshing, actually.
Let's talk about the defense. You know, you guys have one of our favorite guys here in Eric Armstead. Armstead was a leader here. And I think he might have been hurt by the fact the 49ers lowballed him. He's a fixture here. He was a Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year award guy here. I mean, everybody loves Eric. He was the adult in the room. He was a leader on their front, inside, outside, very versatile. How's he played in Jacksonville?
Wasn't good last year. Now, last year was a totally different defense. It was just awful. The scheme was bad. The personnel wasn't great, and he was miscast. They put him outside at defensive end. So a lot of his money was made, as you know very well, on the interior of the defensive line. And for whatever, depending on who you asked as to why he was playing outside. One explanation last year was, he asked to play outside. And then at the end of the year, when everybody got fired, he's like, no, I mean, I wanted to play inside. So it's whatever. That's in the rear view. This season, he's playing inside. He's a defensive tackle, and he's really working well with these edge players in Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen. And they run a lot of games, a lot of stunts, and move people around, and that's been fun to see. I'm interested to see if he can really step it up on his own when they just rush 4 straight. Can he beat the guy and get to the quarterback? Hasn't quite done that on his own yet. Not to say that he can't. Let's just see how much gas is left in the tank for him. But he's, as you said, a good, solid citizen to have in that locker room, a guy who's played a lot of football and has seen a lot of things go the right way and knows what it's supposed to look and feel like, and that's never a bad thing to have.
No, and the defenses look good. I mean, Jags rank 5th in points allowed. They're giving up 17 a game. Rushing yards allowed per game, I think they're also 5th. They give up about 82 yards a game. But they're not converting a lot of their pressure into sacks. They rank 9th. They've got 44 QB pressures, but they only have 6 sacks, and their pressure rate, 33.6%, is 18th in the league. You mentioned Trayvon Walker. He was drafted ahead of Aiden Hutchinson. I'm sure Trent Baalke is probably going to have that on his tombstone. But Walker leads the team. He's got a couple sacks. Armstead second with 1.5. You mentioned, the outside rush. I kind of like the outside rushers that this team has. I mean, Walker's a big-bodied guy. Josh Allen, or Hines-Allen, loved him in college. I mean, he's always been a really talented guy. And then I thought they kind of found a couple guys in B.J. Green, the Colorado kid, who's kind of short and stocky but powerful. He was great for Dion. And Strigow from Minnesota made this team as well. How would you describe this defensive line? I mean, and Mason Smith from LSU is a gigantic, huge guy with a lot of talent. We'll see if they can get it out of him. How do you see the front? They got some nice ends.
Yeah, and let's start with the premier guys, like the first-round draft picks. Trayvon Walker is a really solid all-around defensive end. He may not have the pure pass rushing moves of Aiden Hutchinson, as we saw on Sunday Night Football last week, right? He's all over the field. But he's about as sturdy as they come. And it is a 60-minute fight with him if you're lined up against him. And he will push you around, and he will bully you, and occasionally he'll make a move. And he's working on some of those moves on the pass rushing game. And he's pound for pound, he might be the best overall player on this defense, just the way he goes about the game. The numbers might not reflect that, but he's a really good addition to this team. Josh Hines-Allen already has a second contract, and that's the next trick for him, is just to get home more, because his pressure numbers are there. I mean, he's winning against the line, but he's just a half a tick behind a lot of times the quarterback getting off. He wasn't last week. He had the tip ball from behind on C.J. Stroud that caused the game-winning interception to seal the game after the Jags had taken the lead. So that's a huge play and an impact moment from a group that hasn't had a lot of that in key moments late in games. You need that game-ending pass rusher. They haven't had a lot of that, but Josh Hines-Allen offers that. They've got some veteran guys behind them on the ends. Dwan Smoot, who's been around the league for a long time. Emmanuel Ogbah is on this team as well. He's rolling in there. And the young guys, Strigo and B.J. Green, just haven't been active yet. They're developmental players for down the line. But I feel like those are probably the next wave of rotational guys once Smoot and Ogbah are done. They're getting a little older in the league. The interior is the big question. Devon Hamilton is the nose tackle and a big, sturdy guy. But same thing, doesn't really offer a lot up the field. You mentioned Armstead. Mason Smith is a guy that was drafted by the previous regime here. He had some injury things in training camp and has been a little slow getting moving this season, but they feel like he had a step up last week in production. So there's some things there that can be improved, I think, on the interior. But they've been really good against the run so far. I mean, that's been their number one priority is, okay, we're not going to let these teams run on us. We're going to, be the bullies up front and make the quarterback beat them. And so far, so good.
And that second level, I mean, Lloyd was a first-round pick out of Utah. Yeah. The kid from Yale has always been an unbelievably productive player.
No kid. He's no kid anymore. He's a grown man.
He's a tackling machine as well. Is it Foysaid Alikhan, or how do you am I butchering that?
Yeah, you are. We call him Foye Oluokun is his name.
Foye Oluokun.
So Foye he was a mid-round pick in Atlanta and made his bones there and was the league's leading tackler there for a couple of years. The Jaguars got him in free agency, and he continued that the first year. And again, last season, miscast, they were taking him off the field on certain downs. I mean, he played every down of football for like 6 years straight.
Right.
Like, wait a minute. Now all of a sudden he can't. What are you doing? So they were doing like hockey shift line stuff last year. It was really weird. And it was odd. He's the team captain. He's not going to call anybody out during a season in management or coaching or anything, but it just wasn't right. Now he's out there. He's the middle linebacker. He's the guy that calls plays. He's the guy you can rely on. And he flies downhill and makes tackles. That's just what he does. A lot of that stuff was not behind the line of scrimmage in the last couple of years, but there's some of that starting to pop back into his game as well. Devin Lloyd has been a great disappointment overall with the Jaguars. Same thing. They just couldn't find the right spot. What is his role here? Like, was he an off-the-ball linebacker? At Utah, they used him on the line a bunch and rushed him, and he's all around the football, and he just has not had that role. Well, now I think this defense with Anthony Campanelli running it has found a spot for him. And he's motivated to play better, too. It's a contract year for him. They didn't take the fifth-year option, so this is year 4. And, all right, he's not out there all the time. When he's out there, it's for a certain reason. And he's come and played hard. He makes really good, hard physical tackles. And, was there around a fumble last week to pick it up. And he's a good, solid guy to have in that locker room, too. You just need more production out of him. And I think this might be the year you're going to see more out of Devin Lloyd, finally. It's been a while.
Niners are beat up at wide receiver, but Ricky Pearsall's been hot. Do the Jags play a lot of man? Do they play a lot of zone? I mean, I know Tyson Campbell's a hell of a player, and he's coming off of a really nice game. Obviously, you got Hunter back there, and Jordan Lewis was a good player in Dallas. He comes over as the nickel. How's that secondary, and what do they do back there?
Well, yeah, I think in theory, most times it's zone, so they can look at the quarterback. If they could rush 4 and play zone in the back, that's their ideal. They can switch up and do some man things. They feel like Hunter can be a really good man cornerback in the NFL. Tyson Campbell's on his second contract already too. They probably paid him a year early. And he doesn't have like the big numbers, interception numbers, and all that. But last week was probably one of his better games in a long time, with shutting down for most of that game. And then he did give up the big touchdown to tie the game on a double move, just was beaten, but then comes back. And on the next drive for the Texans, game's tied 10-10 in the fourth quarter. Peanut punches the ball out after a catch. Red zone fringe going in, punches it out. Jags get the football. Big play for a guy who had just given up And he learns, he knows how to forget, which is good. You need that as a cornerback sometimes. So they like Hunter. Jordan Lewis has been one of the best free agent additions on this defense all offseason. Just brings a different level of intensity to his game. And that was badly needed back there for the secondary. They didn't have a lot of guys that just felt like there was a lot of, okay, bad play, we're done, in years past. That's not Jordan Lewis. He's going to go 60 minutes plus and be there the whole time. They revamped the safety room, so they've got Andrew Wingard, who's been around here as a role player, special teams guy, started in 2021 and was out of the lineup, has been hurt. But he's starting one of the safety spots, and he's got a motor that won't quit. And Eric Murray is a salty vet too, who they brought in free agency. Those guys may not be the fastest guy in football, but they're going to be in the right place. And they're going to communicate. And everybody in the secondary is going to know where they need to be. And that's half the battle right there. We didn't have that around here the last few years. So it's a fully revamped secondary. And so far, hey, they're taking the ball away. They had 3 takeaways last week. They have 9 for the season, 3 in 3 straight games for the first time in franchise history. And last season, they had 9 takeaways all year long.
Wow.
So they've done it in 3 games. So that's a success for the revamp of the defense.
And you got a kicker that can make it from 70.
Well, I'd rather not see that on the regular, to be honest with you. That means there's some issues moving the ball down the field, right? So it's there if you need it at the end of a half or at the end of a game. It's a good thing to have in your back pocket. I think if they're at 70, they'll try to do what was it Detroit did on Sunday night and try to get – he almost made a 67-yarder. Get a little slider play, get in there and call a timeout. 70's the extreme. 65, all right, I think they'll let it loose.
JP, we'll leave you with this one. Give us your perspective. We'll get more of kind of the out-of-town perspective on the Niner quarterbacks. Mac Jones is actually, I think, from Jacksonville. And he was in June. He said he was practicing with his pads on, trying to learn the offense by himself in a field in Jacksonville. And I said, man, that's dedication. If you're putting on pads in July or June and out there in Jacksonville, you're sweating up a storm. What do you guys give me the Nationals perspective on Mac? And I don't know if you guys know him because he's local, and give us the national perspective on Brock Purdy. What you think of the 2 Niner quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, Brock Purdy is just an incredible story. I mean, to go from where he was picked to, he had a really good team around him, but that doesn't matter. You play with what you have, and he has a really good team, and he's developed over the years, and it's good to see that. And that's a positive for anybody who's drafted late in the NFL to have that kind of success. And for the next wave of guys coming up, like, hey, this is another example that it doesn't really matter where you're drafted. It matters how you play after you're drafted. And he's played really well, and that's a really good story. Mac Jones is from the Bolles School, which is a private school here in Jacksonville, Florida, and it's 4 miles from the Jaguars facility, if that. I mean, it's right here. So he knows all about Jacksonville, what it means. And he was the backup here last year. So he was the one throwing all those balls to Brian Thomas Jr. down the field late last year. They weren't doing a whole lot else. I mean, let's be honest. There wasn't much else to do. They couldn't run the ball. But Mac's a solid veteran quarterback, and I think this is a perfect spot for him to be a backup guy. If you need a couple weeks out of him, I think that's what it is. Will he be a full-time starter in the league and do it week over week for 4 months? I think that's a big ask for Mac. He's a smart guy. He's going to know the offense. The execution of the offense is going to be tough sometimes just because there's some limitations in what he can do down the field. But it's a perfect spot for him right now in this San Francisco system, especially with, if Brock Purdy can get back, it's the best thing for San Francisco. But he's won for 2 weeks in a row, so you can't really argue too much with Mac Jones.
Yeah, ask 49er fans now. They love him. Check back in a few weeks. We'll see.
The Patriots fans still hate him, but that's another story.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that, it's interesting, too, because of his struggles in New England, and that's such an iconic franchise. It's right there next to ESPN. I think the national vibe on Mac Jones is very negative. But he's been great here. He's been absolutely great here. Shanahan loves him, and so far, 2 weeks, he's played pretty good football. Mm-hmm. On the way out the door, give me a prediction on the game for Sunday and something that you're going to be looking for maybe in the first half.
I need positive body language from the Jaguars offense is what I need. You
Okay.
know, they've had a lot of drops last week. Brian Thomas Jr. is one of those bad body language guys. And if things aren't going well, it just kind of pours over to the sideline and it's a vortex. It's like hard to get him out of it. And all right, let's watch that. That's a big priority. I think it's a running game for the Jags. That's what they're going to want to do. They had to adjust last week in the first half. The Texans slowed them down in the run game, so they were throwing it around, but they weren't catching it, right? So that was a problem early in that game. Early success, I think, for this offense, one way or another. I think that's a big key. And you know what? I think they're going to keep defenses are going to keep probably take the Texans' blueprint. Let's stuff this run game and make 16 beat us. Because he hasn't proven yet, at least this season, that he's been able to beat somebody on his own down the field with his arm. So I think that's going to be the formula until it's not. And then on defense, it's the same thing. Keep getting pressure, stop the run, keep getting those pressures. You're going to get home on some sacks at some point, and then that leads to takeaways. That's been their formula on defense. And, you know, it does help the Jags that there are a lot of injuries with San Francisco right now, both sides of the football, especially on offense. So, got to take advantage of whatever's out there, whatever runs out that tunnel for San Francisco on Sunday. The defense has really carried this team so far. Even though they gave up a bunch of points in Cincinnati and lost that game, overall, it's they can run the ball and play defense. That's the formula for the Jaguars' success.
JP Shadrick, Jag senior reporter. He's a great follow on X at JP Shadrick. Promote your podcast, man. There's lots of people out here that stumble into new podcasts and wind up being regulars. So promote away.
Yeah, Jaguars.com, the official team website. All our programming is there. We have morning and afternoon shows. So we have another group that does the morning shows, Jags AM. We have Jaguars Happy Hour in the afternoon. Pete Prisco is on with us each and every Monday to recap from CBS Sports. He's a former Jaguars beat writer. That's why we have him on, and we get a little salty both ways about the game, which is fun. Thursday, we have Jags HQ, so our leadership, the GM, the EVP are in, the head coach occasionally. That's on Thursday afternoons. And then I do pre- and post-game show just like you, Larry. So it's 3 hours of pregame, 2 hours of postgame, and then on the side, I mix in some play-by-play. So you folks on KMBR might hear me on Touchdown Radio on Saturdays occasionally doing college football, or on an occasional Westwood one-game NFL a little later in the season. So it's a busy fall. It's fun.
Wow, you're busy man. JP Shadrick, check out his podcast, Jag Senior Reporter. Great follow on X, at JP Shadrick on X. JP, I really enjoyed this conversation, man. Have a great week. I would say good luck to the Jags, but nobody here means that. So we'll save that one. But I'm just joking. But hey, thanks for the time. Thanks for jumping on KMBR, and we appreciate your time, man.
Great to connect, and we'll do it again soon. Thanks.
Sounds good. JP Shadrick, Niners and Jags go on Sunday. All right. There we go. A little bit of JP Shadrick from Jacksonville, and he does a nice job. He really does a nice job. Couple comments here. Let's get to. We got this one from Raynon Miranda. Hey, I'm a newbie. What is Cadillacing? That's basically like saying somebody's dogging it. When somebody's Cadillacing, that means they're dogging. The light's blinking wildly. But yeah, if you're Cadillacing, you're dogging it. If somebody says, man, you're Cadillacing, that's not a compliment. Jesus is truth, says Larry. What's your score prediction? 49ers and Jaguars. I like the 49ers to win this game, but I think it's going to be a low scoring game as well. I mean, I think it's going to be one of those Niners don't score a lot, but they allow less. So I'm going to say, I think the Jaguars will have some success running it. I'm going to say 20-13 49ers. I don't think it's going to be high scoring. I think it's going to be low scoring. But I think it's going to be kind of like this last game. A lot of, it's not going to be a 12 possession game. It's going to be a shorter game than that. More running from both sides. I like the Niners to win this one. I'll say maybe 20. Yeah, let's say 21-13. 21-13. 3 touchdowns for the Niners. 1 touchdown and a couple field goals for the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, we've gone a little overtime, but that's okay on YouTube. We can do that. We can go a little overtime. Thanks to all of you guys for jumping in. We started this hour. There was nobody in the room. We have over 250 people watching live right now, so we appreciate every single one of you. I am not done for the night. It is 7:05. In an hour and 25 minutes, so at 8:30, I will go live on the Krueger Show with the great Raj Melwani, and we will discuss Nick Bosa, the 49ers, the 3-0 start. What do they do to replace Bosa? Did they do anything to replace Bosa? So I will go live with Raj Melwani on the Krueger Show on YouTube at 8:30, and you're all welcome to join. And that does it for us. Thanks to all of you guys. I'm back tomorrow. Tomorrow is, let's just get the full breakdown here of the schedule, because you got to be scheduled. You got to have everything on schedule. So today is Tuesday. Tomorrow we're going to have Niners Nightly YouTube only as well. Also, you can hear me tomorrow morning with Murph and Marcus at 8:50. I'll be joining the boys at 8:50 in the morning. We'll see if they bring up the Fantasy League, where I'm leading the KMBR Fantasy League with a 3-0 record. Shanahan speaks at 12:40 in the auditorium down in Santa Clara. I will be there for that. What else? We're going to talk a little bit. So we got, Niners Nightly tomorrow at 6. Little 49ers tomorrow will be down in Santa Clara for practice, and we'll report back. We'll do some videos and that kind of thing. Thursday, Niners Nightly's on the radio at 6 o'clock. Looking forward to that. And then Friday, Niners Nightly back on YouTube. So the last week of YouTube shows with Giants baseball wrapping up. But that does it for us tonight. Thanks to all of you. We'll see you tomorrow on The Sports Leader.